So in this video, I'm talking about the Eminence in the Shadow Volume 5 again, as I'm going over the second half of the volume itself. So if you do want the first half, then check out my playlist when it comes to Eminence in the Shadow light novel content. This volume, honestly, is pretty awesome as far as start to finish goes. I really do enjoy it, and I did have someone ask me after I finished reading. I was telling them, hey, I finished reading volume 5. They were like, what did you think of it? And I was kind of like, I do like volume 4 more just because of what's in volume 4, just because of the whole concept of like multiple universes kind of spinning around and the colliding and being able to jump between them, and how Sid is able to go back to Japan. That whole story arc there was just really cool. I love the idea of isekais where you can jump backwards and forwards, because it adds some interesting dynamics, because it doesn't get done super heaps. It's done before, but it's just not done an insane amount, and that's why I do like when isekais try to spice things up a little bit, because I watch a lot of isekais, and I mean a lot. If you've been on my channel long enough and you've known my history throughout my channels, I've watched a lot of isekais. I'm a junkie when it comes to that kind of stuff, but there are a lot of isekais that try to do the same formula. So when Eminence in the Shadow tries to do something different, I really relish in that and I really enjoy it. But volume 5 is still really good, especially with Zeta and her backstory, because that was quite interesting in itself. Like, it goes over two parts. So the first part is to do with the bank itself. Like, for those that remember from the previous volumes, which is basically the first part of season 2, which has just finished its arc, you got the whole bank stuff and how they have their own economy and money and all that. They're now doing loans, and it's just really funny how manipulative they are with their loan systems. And the two what's the best word to put them? The two friends for Sid, which is just the two musketeers, and they're not exactly the brightest bunch out there, but they've decided to take a loan from the Mishigoti, I think that's how you say it, bank. And it's basically one of those where it's designed in a way so that they will have to pay back the money for the rest of their lives. Like, that's the point. Like, they took out the money, you only have to pay back a certain amount with a certain amount of interest, that makes it that the amount of money that you pay each year basically just gets lumped back onto it. So you're spending the rest of your life paying money back, but because they're so dumb, they don't even realize that that's how it works. And honestly, it's just like, Sid's just like, and they're just like, oh no, it's all good, we don't have to worry about it, they did all the math for us. It's like, you know what? That is how banks work in the real world. So it is a real good representation of how the real world works. And I don't mean exactly like that, like banks make that, but it is pretty close to how banks work. They come up with a system where it's like you end up paying so much money back, where it's just like you pay back really more than what you took out. It's just ridiculous. But it's just funny nonetheless. The amount of money that they pay back every month, the amount of accumulation and interest, puts them in a permanent debt. And then they're like, oh yeah, we'll take out another loan. It's just like, are you even able to? Or are they just going to deny you that because now you're in a permanent debt? But you go from that, it's the whole like gambling stuff from the past stuff. And then you go into Zeta's backstory, which was where it got really interesting, because it's very clear this is going to have a long-term effect on the story itself when it comes to her sort of the curse, and how it's seen as the, at least from this particular part, it's like the curse and the free heroes. Now, I don't know if there's more. I don't think there is, but it talks about like how there's the free heroes, and you got the Cult of Diablos and the Demon Diablo story, and how they're trying to kill or take over or take away these individuals that have these curses, because they're kind of labeling them as exactly that, cursed demons, so that they can get rid of them. And I just thought it was interesting, because it is one of those tragic backstories that kind of have one of those kind of cliches to it, but I still really like it, because Zeta's kind of got your mother, the father, the brother, and how they got this curse, and they kind of resided themselves, that they would have to give up their life. The father goes somewhere, tries to look for a cure for the curse, and is trying their best, really is trying their hardest, and then ends up uncovering the truth about the free heroes and how they're kind of meant to be there to defeat the demon itself, the Diablos, or Diablo. I like to say Diablos, it's easier. But this priest is part of the cult, basically uncovers it and goes, hey, this girl's got this curse, or someone in that family's got the curse, and it all comes out, and he ends up killing the entire family. And that's where Sid comes along, saves the day, and joins in with Alpha and the team. You kind of feel really sorry for Zeta in this little story arc, but at the same time, this might be a hot take, and I'm just saying my honest opinion here, even if it gets me a little bit of heat. It is a bit of a cliche story, but that's the entire point. It's kind of simple, basic, but I still really enjoy that kind of simplisticness to the story. And I'm really curious to see where it goes further on, because I feel like even though it's simplistic in nature, they're going to add more layers to it, and especially with volume 4, there's some interesting spins and kind of deviations to the stories. It's one of the things that I really like about The Eminence in the Shadow is how they grab a very cliche basic story and they really spice it up quite well. And it's why, yeah, I'm saying that it's that, but I'm not meaning that in a negative way. Like, I'm sure some people will hear that and go, oh, that's your way of insulting the series. No, I'm not trying to insult the series or say it's a bad thing. I'm just pointing out that, yeah, it's a very simple way of telling the story. Tragic backstory, has a curse, is destined to defeat this greater evil. But the fun part is how Sid or Shadow plays into this role and how he is changing things up. It kind of feels like if Sid or Shadow wasn't part of the story, it would be one of those most cliche, like Disney style stories, one of the old school versions. But with adding Shadow and Sid into it, it really just adds this like chemistry that just makes it so much more crazy and fun and chaotic. And that's what I really, really love about it. And so from that point onwards, you go into the whole necklace situation with them draining mana from the class. And so to give a bit more context, the class itself have all been pulled into the mist. They've all had these necklaces put on, and it's draining their mana slowly. And it's been used to try and bring back again, just as I said, the whole cult thing, the Diablos, the right arm, all of these kind of things are all intertwined together. And I just love the way Shadow kind of plays that role again. He's playing that sort of simple student, the damsel in distress, and right at the end, he kind of shows who he really is to a certain individual girl. And I just love it. I love the way they play this whole role out. Rose's role in stopping the cult, breaking them away from the church. It's just, love it. Really love it. And also the arm as well with the sister, like her talking to the arm and her saying to Aurora, going, you know, help, and her coming out. And then there's also a little bit of interesting history there where one of the cult members is like, hey, you know, is this your sacrifice? And I do believe that member is telling the truth. I think she's going to use her as a sacrifice. I'm sure Sid will come up with some harebrained super solution to fix the problem, but it's pretty obvious that, yeah, the power in her arm pulsating, it is so fun. Again, as I said before, it's that cliche fun little story of where she's got this power in her arm. She's kind of got that Chinibyo kind of thing going on. That's why Sid thinks that, but it's real. It's a real power that's in her arm, and it's the perception. It's why I love how they tell the story. But Aura is helping when it chooses her, and it's clear that she has her own agenda. She's planning to use her to her own personal use. But I'm kind of curious more about that as well. It's that multiple layers to the story, and that does play a big part in the whole necklace situation. But the whole point of the necklaces was to drain the mana and use it to help summon the whole stuff again, as I mentioned before. But what I got the most enjoyment out of was the classmates and how they all interact with each other, the different characters, the kind of power struggles, the manipulations, the whole, oh, well, how did you know this did this, and how did you know you could transfer mana, and how did you know it popped their heads? Like, all the mind games going on between some of the students, and then how Sid kind of comes in and does his whole little knight in shining armor kind of routine. It's just so much fun. That's what I love about Eminence in the Shadow and why I enjoy these volumes. But for me, as I've said in previous videos, and this isn't so much about the light novels, this is about the anime, when you read the light novels, you get a very different experience to the anime because it's all played out in a visual effects. Like, for me, if I read something like Shield Hero, Mushoku Tensei, Overlord, I kind of know what to expect when it's put in an anime format. But with Eminence in the Shadow, it just feels like a spectacle. It feels like this completely different experience, even if it's very close, if not identical to the light novels. I know I've seen some people say that the anime is closer to the manga. I don't really agree with that, but then I haven't read the mangas to know. But I've had many people say that the manga more focuses on the comedy aspect, while the light novel focuses more on the actual intricate details, the monologuing, and all that kind of stuff. But for me, I just feel like the anime tries to take it one step further at being a spectacle. Yes, it's got the comedy aspect, but I feel like it's more trying to make a performance out of it, whether it's all just comedy gags and stuff. I feel like it's more about showing the spectacle. So it's one of the reasons why I love reading the light novels, but also enjoying the anime as well. And I feel like some of this may be season 3 stuff, and some of it may be season 4 stuff. It really depends on if they do a single core or a double core again. But I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What did you think of volume 5 in its entirety, not just part 1 but also part 2, the entire volume? What did you think of volume 4 as well? I know I asked in the previous review when I was reviewing volume 4, but just I've seen a lot of people say that they like volume 5 more than volume 4, but for me, I don't know, I just really love that, like, jumping between worlds, and I'm curious to see if that happens again as well. I assume it will happen again, and certain characters have been dragged over, and so there was some talk about that in the start of volume 5, about kind of getting the technology, learning information, and how that might end up helping the Shadow organization, the Eminence and the Shadow. I do feel like that is going to be something where they'll do some backwards engineering on some of the technology, and they'll use that technology, sell that technology to make additional more money and bring more of the Japanese culture and our modern culture and technology to the world. But also they might use some of that as a way to have an edge above the Cult of Diablos as well, because the Cult of Diablos does have a big advantage where they have a lot of those members do have immortality. I mean, the whole point of them bringing the demon back is so that they can then control it and give themselves immortality. And there's also that part as well about Sid and how Zeta wants to give Sid or Shadow immortality as well, but it also is pretty obvious he'll find some way of gaining immortality. I feel like that's probably one of the end games, is where he will just have immortality regardless. So that is something I foresee in the future of the volume. So I will definitely be getting into volume 6 at some point soon, as I will find a translation for that and read it and give my thoughts on the channel. So of course, if you like Eminence in the Shadow content, not just light novel but also anime content as well, definitely stick around on the channel, as I do a variety of light novel and anime content when it comes to the series, and not just Eminence in the Shadow but also other animes as well. So if you like this video, hit the like, subscribe, and I'll see you beautiful nerds in the next video.